So this video is a continuation from the previous. And in this series, I'm going to go through this quickly, but I want you guys to go back and go through it a little more slowly. And the reason I picked this painting is because it works with art as terms of a painting, but also it works with interior architecture as in the fact that it's a dining room. So you can see it from both sides, because it's really important that you all understand art and design as a comprehension or comprehensively, because it is. You can't separate them. Okay, and so art criticism is studying, understanding, and judging works of art. And in this case, Henri Matisse has painted, he's no longer among us, he's gone, the dessert, Harmony in Red. And clearly from the title, we now know that the subject of the painting is dessert. And it hangs in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. Okay, and then remember our 4 steps. We're going to describe it, we're going to analyze it, we're going to interpret it, and then we're going to use all that data that we've just acquired to assess it. Now, in the real world, you're not always going to have the ability to do all that out loud. You're not going to be able to have that dialogue with the person who you're getting feedback from, or you're giving feedback to. You're often going to have to do this in your head. So when someone is doing their presentation of their work, you should be doing those first 3 steps in your head, or writing notes on a piece of paper, so that when it comes to, they say, are there any questions? This is when you pull out your brief assessment, right? You will give a summary of what you just, those 3 steps of what you see, your analysis and your interpretation. And then based on that, give your feedback. Okay, we're going to condense it in, to make it realistic. But in order to understand it, I've pulled this apart so that you can go through this step by step and start practicing doing this. And I want you guys, here's your permanent long-standing homework. I want you to do this with everything you say from now on. Just start analyzing it. Start looking at things and saying, what do I see? And then quantify it. That's all you're doing, objectively quantifying it. What do you see in terms of elements? What colors, lines, shapes, textures? What's the positive space? What's a negative space? What are the forms? What's the theme? What's the subject? What's the style? I see, well, this is just the things that you see, but this one is the color, right? Red, a very jarring red. I see blue, I see yellow, I see green. Lines, I see both straight lines and I see curvy lines. What shapes, what forms. The space is very, very crowded space, but in terms of positive space and negative space, the backgrounds in these are, the red, that background is the red here is our negative space. It fights with the foreground space. And then, what's the texture? There's a lot of patterns here. So those are the kinds of things you're doing. You're looking at the work, you're looking at what's being presented to you, and you're making a list of the elements of design and saying what you see for each one of those. Okay, and then you're going to analyze it. How are those things arranged? How are the elements applied? How are the principles applied to the elements? How is the composition balanced? How's it unified? See, right, this is how you're going to be able to effectively give constructive criticism. Because I can tell you, the first time when I got my AFA first, and we were sitting, we'd all done done paintings, and we were told to line them up on a wall, and then we were told to go line up against the opposing wall and look at our work, and then we were told, okay, give feedback, and I was like, what? No one had told me how to do this. I didn't know what to do. I like it. I don't like it. I don't know why. I'm telling you all, I'm teaching you all how to do this effectively, because why give somebody feedback for the sake of feedback? All you're going to do is upset them. You want to be able to give feedback that's clearly meant to help them, and this is how you do it. Okay, so unity. The composition is unified by color. It's all the colors are saturated. It's unified by shapes. We've got both geometric and organic shapes across the whole composition. It's unified by line. It's unified by style. How is this balanced, right? The woman on the right balances out the painting in the chair on the left. What is the emphasis? The emphasis is where your eye goes to the large swaths of black and white, because that has the highest contrast. So it goes to the woman arranging the dessert platter. Okay, and that is what we do. I know this is very new and very hard for you all, because all of this is new, but it'll come easily. It'll come faster. We're just going to practice. You're going to get the chance to practice. Okay, now we're going to interpret this. So based on the elements and principles that he applied, what do you think Matisse is trying to communicate? They're your clues to understanding his choices. Give your opinion based on the clues we have collected thus far. What ideas, moods, emotions, and stories do you think the artwork communicates? Okay, so red is a predominant color in the feeling of the painting. How does that make you feel? When you look at that, what does that red make you feel? Now we're going to study more detail, the principles and elements of design, and you'll know more about color psychology when we get to that. So that may make an influence. But for now, when you look at the red, when you look at that bright red, how does it make you feel? Well, it usually makes us feel warm. But it also has a psychological effect that excites and stimulates, including your appetite. And that's why a lot of restaurants use red, because it makes people hungry and ends up causing them to order more than they normally would. Okay, so if you interpret this painting as making you feel the hunger associated with dining rooms, you would be interpreting this work. That's an interpretation. The painting makes me want to eat what's on that platter. I want that dessert. I want to go sit in that chair and have some of that dessert. And if that was his goal, if he achieved that goal, right, we're going to now talk about how we use that from there. Very briefly. And he is. He was just part of the group called Fauves, which means wild beasts. And their painting was actually meant to be very emotional and meant to provoke feelings of emotion. So, speaking of color, how would you feel if the painting was green or blue instead of red? So we talked about how the red painting would make you feel. I went into Photoshop and I changed the background on that image to 3 different colors. And so you could see what it looked like. And so you can see how important that color, the elements are to your analysis of the work and your final interpretation of the painting. And in fact, the painting actually went through 3 successive stages. First, it was green, then it was blue, and then after it hung for, I guess, a year, because the final painting was 1909, it was finally delivered in scarlet red to the Russian collector to decorate his dining room. So he got feedback, right? He got that feedback and sort of like, hey, look at the one on the right. Look at that room. I mean, it just makes me want to go to sleep. I don't want dessert. Okay, back to red. So what effect do you think the final location for the painting had on Matisse's color and subject choice? Would a different color have been as impactful? Would we be talking about this painting now if Matisse had stuck with blue? A color associated with sleep and bedrooms instead. Your choices matter. Even if people can't articulate it this well, the choices you make matter. And the more you understand about how they matter, and art criticism helps you do that, the better you will be as a designer and the more clients you will attract. And I will tell you, the most successful designers I know are people who have a wealth of information and can explain their work in these terms. Because that's the reverse of this. You're not just learning how to give feedback. You're learning how to apply it to your own work to make it stronger and better and make good choices in the first place. And so it all works together to make you a better designer. Matisse also limits his perspective in this work, right? He breaks the chair in half. He cuts off the bottom of the table. We can't see the ceiling. We can see out the window. Think about how those matter, or do they? Okay, and so our last step is assessment, judgment. Do you think this work is successful? Why or why not? You have just gathered all the data first before forming an opinion, and I implore you all to do this, because people who pull opinions out of their emotions are not helpful. They're not. And I'm not saying you can't, but what I'm saying is don't say those things out loud. Because I can't tell you how many presentations I've sat through where someone put their work up on a wall and my first gut reaction was, oh God, I hate that. Why did they do this? Why did they do that? And then I decided that was not appropriate, because it's not. And I gave them a chance to explain their work. I looked at it, I analyzed it, I interpreted it, and then I was then able to not say, oh, I hate this, what were you thinking? But I was able to say, what if that pink color were less saturated? What would that do for your composition? And I got them to think about the answer without making them defensive, and they changed the pink, or they changed the color, or they changed the element, right? So persuasive argument is very effective. Okay, I'm actually going to stop this here. We just did this with art. We're now going to go through, I'm going to give you an opportunity to go through and do this with a residence. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.